Uh, okay, let's go. Bismillah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another episode of Wake Your Mind. We have the three eyes, Imran, and Maulana Ismail. Today we're going to be diving into a different topic, one that we said we would expound upon, that we would discuss a bit more. And the time has come, Alhamdulillah. This episode is we're going to be discussing the concept of free will in Islam, the different points of view, from ilmul kalaam and from the Quran and Sunnah and Hadith, and what we have available, and more so, just like it's going to be more so of a philosophical discussion. I think this is something that's not really clear cut or set in stone. It's not like one of the five pillars of Islam where it's like absolutely clear. There's many different viewpoints on how free will works in Islam. The different words you're going to hear, qadar, kasab, and a whole lot of other concepts. So yeah, we are going to dive straight into it, and Maulana Ismail is going to help us try and understand a little bit. This is a heavy topic, and we can talk for hours, but inshallah, we'll try and cover this in about 30 to 40 minutes. If not, then we'll make another episode, a part two of this. Um, Imran, the last time you spoke, you said you wanted to ask a question or begin the show with a question. I think you can go ahead.
It's more of an analogy. What I need the audience and ourselves to also what I need y'all to imagine is if you're sitting in a park and you take your child out to just play in the park, and your child wants to go and play with some of the children, and you watch them from a distance. And you see them playing, and eventually they pull out some toys. One of the toys is a ball, another toy is a bat, another ball, and you watch them playing with toys, and eventually, sometime later, you see that the child actually pulls out a gun from their toy bag. um, and you think it might be real. You hope not. But eventually you see that he points it towards the sky and he fires it, and it is an actual gun. So AJ, in a situation like this, where their parent of that child, um, is sitting there watching them, what would your response be?
I think same as anyone. I'll like probably scream out of concern, fear, immediately run, and
So,
yeah,
so for
yeah,
lack,
get
so
the gun
for
away from. Yeah,
okay, so for a lack of a better word, you'd feel uneasy.
yeah.
And that's putting it very mildly. Okay, now what I want you to contrast this with is the same sort of uneasiness was felt by the angels from the creation of Adam alayhi salam. So do you understand where I'm going with this?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
When
mm-hmm.
when Adam alayhi salam was created, are you familiar uh, with the
Yes,
circumstances that happened with the angels?
yes,
Um,
yes. I mean, the angels even asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you going to create them, and all they're going to do is cause bloodshed and chaos in the world. And
وَيُسْفِكُ
Allah tells
الدِّمَاءَ.
them, I know not what
Exactly.
I know what you know not.
Malana, here's a quiz for you. Quote for us the Arabic, please, because I certainly can't.
يَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَن يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءَ. Are you
MashaAllah.
going to put on there someone who will cause corruption and shed blood? وَنَحْنُ نُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِكَ وَنُقَدِّسُ لَكَ. And we are here, we praising you, and we glorifying you. Then Allah says what you said, إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُ. I know that
Besha.
which you don't know.
Gee, very true. So now, something that we come to realize is that just from that one excerpt is that the exercise of free will was existing on this planet even before the creation of Adam. So that is something that I need all of us to be uh, taking note of. And from here we can really derive a definition of what free will is. The first section of this session is basically going to be laying down the foundations of definitions, and the first definition being free will. At the moment, I think just for now we can define free will as a very personal use, as a very personal use of our actions. But this is a bit reductionist at the moment. It's very simplistic. It is much more complex as we are going to be studying it in the latter parts of this session. But for now, I think that this definition is good. We will expound upon this as opposed to other words like destiny, as you said, as qadar, as well. But yeah, this is the analogy that I wanted us to build a foundation on, because this is very early on in the Mus'haf, in the Quran. It shows us, and it shows us what the position of free will is, and it also shows what the position of the human being is. Seeing that we, as well as the jinn, are the only two. From what I know, we are one of well, unless you take the Israeliyat of the Hin and the Bin that used to be before the jinns. I don't know how authentic that is, Maulana. Do you give any credence to that?
There's no authenticity that we can be sure of. It's just a story. So you're free to accept or reject.
Okay, so even if we reject it, then still, even if we reject or even if we accept it, the fact remains that the effects of free will has been on this planet even before the presence of Adam alayhi salam. So that is free will. What else needs to be defined before we carry on?
I think we can dive straight in. I think Molana will take the floor now. If Molana, you could expound upon, the last time we had a discussion during the ilmul kalaam episode, and you spoke about free will there, and you said there's many viewpoints, the Ashari, Maturidi, and I think there's a few extreme ones that are rejected as well, Jabriya and Qadariya. And yeah, if you could probably give our
Yeah,
listeners.
so it's like, okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So the thing to remember is that the discussion that's happening in the books of ilmul kalam is a very specific discussion on free will and qadar, or Allah's creating our actions. Whereas the common day discourse that we might encounter with individuals it's like on a different plane. They're talking about two different things. I'm going to try to explain that, right? So before we start, we just need to note a few things, right? So number one is there is a hadith which is graded as Hasan, where Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam saw the Sahaba talking about Qadr, and he got extremely angry with them, and basically he told them that this is not something you should go into, right? Because of course, at the time there would be no faida for going into it, etc. Now we need to keep that in mind, in the sense that yes, we're going into the discussion now. Yes, the ulama of Kalam did go into the discussion, but they went into it for a purpose, meaning people were asking questions. They wanted to give a coherent narrative of what could possibly be happening, and that is why they went into it. They didn't go into it because they felt that it was like a dini thing to get to know what's really going on, because this is something the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and ulama explained will be very difficult to grasp. So, and this is not like something we might look at it and say, well, but this is like, shouldn't we question everything, etc., etc. But I want to give you another analogy, right? So in quantum mechanics today, when people look at the double slit experiment and they try to figure out, is light or are these particles behaving like a wave or a particle, or what's really going on, the reality is that the philosophical explanations for it is different views. People are really unable to grasp how this one particle can be a wave and a particle at the same time. It seems to contradict your basic logic. So in quantum mechanics, they have a saying which is like, just shut up and calculate. And it's a thing that they tell people, like in the field. Yeah, it's a thing. It's a famous quote in quantum mechanics where they tell people, especially those who are not in the field, when they ask, "But how is it possible? Like this thing is a wave and a particle at the same time?" And they're like, "Just shut up and calculate. It works. We know it's true because we're using it in all of our devices. The theory is working." What now? To try and understand what on earth is actually going on, it's not useful, so just shut up and calculate. So remember that in a way we can take that as an analogy here for this discussion, in that we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us through Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam that there is taqdeer, or at least through the Quran, we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows every single thing, whatever is going to happen, right? We know that beyond that, there's another discussion. I'm not going to mention this right now because I want us to build into it. But we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows everything. At the same time, we know we have free will. So we know these things as facts. Now, how exactly do they function together? Like, how is the photon a particle and a wave? We may never know. It may be beyond us to know how that actually works. But we can build a sort of framework to show that there is no objection to it, right? So we should, I know I'm speaking about different things, but they kind of related. We should differentiate this from Trinitarians who appeal to Mysterianism. So Trinitarians will say, well, you know what? You're saying that the Trinity, it cannot be understood, etc. But this is God we're talking about, so we don't have to understand everything, so it's fine. And they say, you know what? You do the same thing when it comes to taqdeer or predestination, because you say this is something that can't be understood, so don't question it. Now,
Yeah, yeah.
this is the point that will make all of the difference here, is that the ulama of ilmul kalaam, or just generally when we're talking about predestination, we're not saying that, you know what, the Christians are looking at a doctrine that is logically impossible, right? Simplification, 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 1, right? That is a logical impossibility, and they're saying, leave it be, we can't really understand it. We are saying, no, we will defend this doctrine to show that there is no logical contradiction. There is no 1 plus 1 plus 1 is equal to 1. There's no logical contradiction in it. But exactly how it works, that's a mystery. So if you could show us, well, you know what, this Trinity is not actually 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 1. This is how it works, or this is the basic understanding. This is the answer to your objection. But we don't know the inner workings of it or the mysteries of it. Fine, no problem. Then you could say we're on the same playing field. But here we're both doing different things. You are looking at a logical impossibility, and you are saying that, well, just ignore it. We're saying, no, there's no logical impossibility in this entire discussion. So now, or there's no so now from here, now I want to go a little bit further, and this is basically what.
Maulana, sorry,
Yeah, sorry.
sorry to disturb
No
your
problem.
chain of thought.
No problem.
May I make a point before you carry on?
Yes. No, I was going to actually open the floor up to you now, when I was going to say that basically, what is the objection that you think we are dealing with, right? Because I'm going to try, inshallah, we'll unpack all of the different discussions in it, but I want us to see that we don't, and this is just a qaida also, that we don't need to answer something if there is no legitimate objection. Many times, by giving an answer before fully fleshing out the question, we're validating the objection and the assumptions of the question by answering it without fully vetting whether it deserves an answer as of yet. So there are very valid questions that need to be asked, but we need to bring them out first before we try to answer them, if you get what I'm saying. So yeah, sorry, Karen.
Gee, so what I wanted to say is that I needed to respond to this question, as you were saying that perhaps Trinitarians especially in Christian apologetics, when we say that the Trinity doctrine does not make sense, they can reply to us and say the same about Qadr. This is what AJ a couple of months ago, last year, early on, he alluded to this. I don't know if we have it recorded. He was actually he actually posed a question to me that for the lay person who's actually trying to find the truth, he's studying religion, and obviously every tradition has aspects in it which are not clearly enough described to its followers, or to whoever's studying it. And it may vary from tradition to tradition. Like almost all of the theology in I describe it as Pauline Trinitarianism, which is your mainstream evangelical and Catholic and Protestant religions that you find nowadays. But my response to that would be, I just want to clarify this because it will linger in the back of the minds of people who study religion, is that what we need to understand is that yes, there will be things that traditions will not describe. However, for you to find the truth, you need to, in order for you to find the doctrine that is the truth, it has the foundations of it need to make sense, including the theology, which monotheism, strict monotheism, um, like classical Judaism, I would like to say, I cannot find a better word for it. I'm not talking about rabbinical Judaism. Your classic Judaism, as well as Islam. Uh, in the theology I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the well, a lot of what the Islamic tradition has describes almost everything very clearly, besides the soul and qadr, as opposed to Christianity. That is my response to that. I say that because obviously, as you've said, the Trinity doesn't make sense. Not only that, but the history of the Bible, the history of the Church. There's a whole lot of things that we will discuss later on. But this is my response to it: that the foundations of the tradition that you are studying needs to make sense. That which is true. Anything any doctrine or any tradition, any religion that is true, the foundations of it have to make sense, including the theology. That is very important.
Yeah, sure. I mean, then that's. But again, the issue is that they're saying that Qadr is also it's part of the 6 articles of faith, so it's also a foundation of your theology. So we need to show the difference between our explanation of Qadr and their appeal to mystery or the Trinity. And the difference between our appeal to we don't know how it works and their appeal to we don't know how it works is theirs accepts a logical contradiction in their fundamental beliefs, and ours says no, there's no logical contradictions, but we don't know the finer details.
I
So
would
that's
argue.
would be
I would argue that qadr, as described in the Islamic tradition, is intelligible, whereas Trinity is not.
it could be until let's see when we get into it, but the point is it doesn't have to be like as something we can grasp naturally, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how do we have free will if he knows what we're going to do? It could be something that to another human being might feel like, well, we don't really get it. But does it result in a logical contradiction that undermines its truth claim? No. There's many things we don't get, or many things we can't really grasp how it works. How will Jannah be like this? It's not really, we can't really get it exactly. But that's not a problem because we understand our intellects are limited. But our foundational beliefs cannot contain logical contradictions because logical contradictions are necessarily false. So you can't appeal to mystery to solve 1 plus 1 plus 1 is equal to 1. That's not going to help. You could appeal to mystery to say, well, we don't know exactly how this thing is going to work in Jannah, but we know it's there, and this is the descriptions that we have. So it doesn't even have to be necessarily like intelligible in the most clear sense, if you get what I'm saying. But anyway, let's go into it. But I mean, that would be the
Yeah.
difference between the two. So that's there. So now, if I just put it to you, what is the issue with free will? Why do you think that we don't have free will? Why would a person feel like maybe free will is compromised? Just from your, not saying you specifically, but from maybe conversations we had with other people or what?
Me or AJ?
No, both of you. I mean, just like whatever.
Yeah, I
Like,
could. I
what
mean,
do you think
I
would
can
be the
go first.
common? Yeah.
I can go first. I mean, I did put in our pre-discussion. I think I put an example of Shaitan, right? Of
Right.
Iblis. So we know, right? His existence, fundamentally, his purpose is there for us, for us as a test, and for him to try and misguide us, and eventually, he's on this his whole journey to try and prove Allah wrong. That we are indeed low creatures, and yeah, that's his journey. So the thing is, right, the very first the very first time Iblis broke Allah's commandment was when Allah asked all the angels to bow down and he didn't. In that specific moment, I use that as an example. And if someone asked me this question, about, like, just this example about Satan and Iblis, and if that's his purpose, to be that way, to be our test, then how does it make sense that, he has free will if that's what he's created to do?
Maulana,
Something along those lines.
Do you want to tackle this?
No, go for it. But I'm saying that's sort of like it's adding a lot of layers to the actual nub of the objection. Now we're adding like examples and stuff, which is fine. We can break down those examples. But
Okay,
I want
okay,
us to
great.
get to a point where no, it's
But
good. I'm saying it's good, but I want us to get to a point where we say this is the tension now, minus all whatever. This is the tension is between this fact and this fact seem to be at loggerheads, and we need to reconcile this. But it's good. We got to start here. So go
okay,
for it. What's your thoughts on that?
I think the core of the problem that AJ is trying to describe is that we as human beings were given free will. That's the statement. That's statement number one. We were given free will. Statement number two is that we are 100% responsible for our actions. That's statement number two. Statement number three is there is something called destiny, a forged, a pre-produced path by the creator. That's statement number three. Statement number four is if there is already a pre-produced path, then why are we as human beings being firstly it's a dual question, is that firstly why were we given free will in the first place, and secondly why are we being taken into account for it, seeing that there is a pre-produced plan. Did I cover everything, AJ?
Yeah, one more thing from my side, just for Molana. Just say, okay, say that tomorrow at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, in the record I'm going to commit a sin, right? Hypothetically. Now, from right now up until tomorrow, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, is there a way for me to not, hypothetically not commit that sin? If it's already written right now, do I have the free will to not do it, or am I going to do it anyway, regardless, because it's already written?
Right, now we're
Is
coming. Now we're getting it.
Now, sorry, Banana.
Now, yeah.
Do you want to? What do you think would be better? Should we work from this foundation, or should I respond? Should we first respond to the Shaitan's question that
No, you
AJ?
go. I was thinking you're gonna go for the shaitan question, and then we move from here after that.
All right, okay. AJ, could you please pose it again?
Yeah, it's the same story of Iblis, right? His whole existence, from the beginning of time, we know we don't know for sure. Like we know from the Israeliyats, we know about his how he was a warrior and commander. But post all of that, his main purpose is to test us, and to misguide us, and without that purpose, not without that purpose, sorry, that moment where he disobeyed Allah already knew it was part of Allah's plan, for Shaitan to misguide us, and for Allah to allow him to exist till the end of time, to continue to try and test us and put us off the straight path. If that was his purpose, if it's already decreed, as part of the plan, how is that true free will?
Okay. So I have a certain theory, a theoretical model that I've been um, that I've been drawing out on how fate and destiny is intertwined with one another, and I will apply it later uh, to Satan, to Shaitan himself, and his story. But how I would respond to this is that let's build on a foundation. What we know from our holy book that all jinn and men were created for the precise purpose of the obedience of the one true creator. So do you agree with me?
Yeah.
Okay. So taking that into account, we know that Iblis's purpose was to his one purpose, his one job as a creation of God was to obey him. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. He did not know what his destiny is. Do you agree? Okay. So, and that goes same for each and every other creation. We do not know what our purpose is. And being the imperfect beings that we are, we have mistakes. We fall into sin. We capitulate under our emotions, such as pride, such as despair, such as rage, such as happiness. And unfortunately for Shaitan, his folly was pride. And he was given the opportunity to repent in the court of our Creator, and he did not take it. When that happened, and when he went against the orders of God, and on top of that, he did not repent, and on top of that, he he actually, in his madness, I would say, this is why I have a maxim of my own, that pride leads to madness. Pride is one of the emotions that actually lead to madness. Madness in this case being that he held God responsible for his defect. So this is one of the things that he 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 underwent this transformation because it was done by his own hands, whether he likes it or not, whether he likes to face it or not. And it was because of this that it is because of this that he became this accursed being. To the degree that even in the Islamic tradition, from my studies, it's what I've come to understand is that even if Shaitan was not in the picture, if we take him out completely, our nafs would be, our desires, our ego would be the factor that would test us in this world. So, have I covered everything? Do you understand?
I understand. Yeah. See, like
But
I
obviously
I
now
get it.
I'm just saying, not to think that your objection's still going to narrow down to how you guys very succinctly summed up the
Mm.
objection, which is that in was it already written that he would disobey and make these choices? If so, why is he held accountable? So it's going to come to that eventually. But you did a good job of stripping away the rest of the story.
Yeah.
So now we basically now took that story and we made it one example of the issue that you guys both summarized just before this, which
The
basically, as
final,
you gave it in the 4 steps and he gave it in the 1 sentence, basically the same thing. Now we
yeah,
can just take this as one of those examples, but it's not specific to Shaitan. But that's the point that I want to get
Yeah.
across, which you showed, is
G,
that it will apply to anyone doing any sin ever.
Yeah,
G,
like to be honest, I've heard a lot of like stories as well about where, like in the Musa alayhi salam's time or whatever it is, there was a lot of, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give parents a child that would be disobedient as a test. So now that child, even the story of, the boat, where Musa alayhi salam was told to follow, what's his name now? If you guys,
Khidr,
Khidr,
if you brothers can help me.
Khidr.
Yeah, so Musa alayhi salam was on the boat and then he killed this young boy. And he told Musa alayhi salam, don't question me. At the end, I'll give you the answer to everything. And yeah, that also, like, piqued my interest a little bit. So in that case, if that child was meant to be a menace, to the parents, and give them a hard time, so much so that Allah had to send someone to kill that person, and so the parents would get another child that would, keep them happy, and it's somewhere along those lines. So for that first person who was dead, like, who died, was there any real free will? Because that was the test that Allah put for the parents. Just as an example, yeah, like Malana said, it's not
Okay,
really
so
specific to
I kind of
Shaitan.
get
A
what
lot
you're
of
saying
people.
here. Why the Shaitan example is slightly different. So but I want to strip away that so to get to the actual objection, which I already summarized. So basically, the difference with the Shaitan example and the Khidr example, or Khadir, or however you want to pronounce the name, is that it seems that they had a purpose to. So there's two separate objections, right? We have to be clear about this. It's a very technical topic, and if we're not clear, I'm not comfortable going further unless we're clear on certain things, because then it just leads to confusion. So
Mhm.
there's one objection, which is that, okay, this applies to me and you. If I sin tomorrow, was it pre-written for me to sin? Could I have not sinned? Do I have free will due to the fact that it was
Yeah.
pre-written? That applies to shaitan in the wrong he did and whatever wrong anyone else ever did ever, right? And it's not like specific to any person. And then there's another one where the person does a sin, right? Or he does something wrong like shaitan. But it seems like this was also part of a broader plan. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used his sin as a test. So then it's also now his purpose. Right? So this adds an extra layer to it. But I want to take away that layer because as Imran already mentioned, that yes, from Allah's perspective, he would be the test for so and so person. But from his perspective, he was commanded to do A and B and C, and he didn't do A, B, and C. And so from his perspective, it doesn't make a difference to the free will. His free will is maybe challenged by the fact that Allah knew that he was going to sin, and we can talk about that. But it's not challenged by the fact that when he sinned, Allah wanted it to be a test for someone else. I don't know if
Yeah,
you
his
if you
actions are
if you're
still his
following that.
actions, and yeah, no, I'm
Yeah.
100% with you. His
So
actions are
if you're
still his
with me till
actions, and he's going
there,
to be held accountable
so
for it. Yeah,
so we can basically now remove all. So circumstances don't matter anymore. Specific stories, Khadir, Shaykh doesn't matter. We're dealing with one objection, which is that does Allah Subhanahu wa Taala predestining something mean that we don't have free will? And so now everything falls under that. Even good actions would fall under that. Bad actions, any actions, it's all written. So do we have free will? Are we there? So are we? So can we say that that is the objection that we're dealing with now?
yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So
Accountability is something 100% that you have to have. Like even if it's if the knowledge is predestined, your actions that you do are still, you're going to be held accountable for it. Same with shaitan. Same with the
sure, but
yeah.
yeah, sure, that's for 100%. And but the thing is now, do we have genuine free will if we couldn't have done something else?
Yeah,
I
that
get
was
me.
the
That's
question I asked you. Yeah, like
yes,
like
that was the one
God
you
tomorrow
asked, and
asking us.
that is the question. Now it doesn't matter whether it's a good deed or a bad deed or any deed
Yeah,
or anything that ever
indeed.
happened.
Yeah.
You get me. So I want us to take away all the basically the excess, and now that's the point that we're focusing on. So any thoughts on that? And remember, but now before we even go forward, this is not even the free will discussion in the books of Kalaam, but this is the discussion you will have with every person on the street. What we're going to discuss now
Yeah,
about Allah. This
100%.
is not the discussion in the books of ilmul Kalaam, which I may or may not talk about. We'll see a little bit later. That's a whole separate discussion, although it's similar, but it's about a different thing. And I mean, we'll talk about that inshallah. But this is the one that we need to discuss because this is the one that people are discussing. Like, when you meet people, this is what they ask.
Jay, just something before we continue, before I forget, because I want this to be as a building block. One of our foundations is that the attitude that we give the subject. Um, Maulana, I know that you are a scholar. You're an academic. Um, I don't want to be crossing the line per se, seeing that I'm I'm just an average. I represent the average Muslim, and by no means am I even close to um, the depth or the depth of a scholar. But I have an issue with topics like this. Uh, no matter which source that I try to study from, the way that people try to describe qadr and free will is it's as if it's extremely difficult to grasp, and it's something that we are never ever going to find a way to reconcile it. It's just this attitude that I have a problem with. I can understand that there have been people much more intelligent than myself and any of us in this podcast who tried to tackle this problem, and they might not have been successful in reconciling it. But I do believe that there is a way of reconciling it, even if it may seem impossible. But this is the attitude that I want us to go into this: that there is a way to try to understand it,
So
even if it
yeah,
even if it is contrary to the words of scholars of the past. If I be so bold as to say it.
so I think if we're talking about this specific discussion that we're having right now, sure, there definitely is a way that we can reconcile it, inshallah. I don't really see a big issue with that. But what the scholars of the past were talking about was the other ilmul kalam discussion, which genuinely, they had a very good right to say that it's not something that's easily resolvable, if at all. And up to today, Mohammad Ijab has a paper written on this where he surveys all of the different options. I think I remember what conclusion he comes to, or maybe I'll discuss it. But and he feels that everyone failed until I think he goes with like this one scholar, which no one may even have heard of his view, to try and reconcile it. But that's a they were talking about a separate discussion than the one we're having right now. The one we're
Okay,
having right now.
I
So that's
know.
important to remember. The one we're
Uh,
having right now, they don't really have an issue with resolving. In fact, they don't really care too much about
Yeah,
it. If I
this
may
is
be
more for
also
the
honest.
layman that that would have a question. Like
Yeah.
almost every person you speak to would have this type of question,
Yes,
so
as
and
opposed to
so I agree
scholars.
with you. We should go into the discussion thinking there is a easily resolvable, or not even if it's not easily, but resolvable or way to explain it in some form or the other. But the discussion but we shouldn't think that they were like saying that for no reason. They were saying that based on another discussion, which I'm going to open up a little bit, but I don't
okay,
think there's a big need to go into it because it's not so thing. So just bear that in mind.
okay.
But
No,
okay,
no, I
go
didn't
ahead.
know. Okay, no, I
Yeah, no,
didn't
no, no.
know.
I
But
fully understand what you're saying. I
comparing
fully
it,
get what you're saying.
okay, but comparing it to the topics in the books of ilmul kalaam, would you compare in comparison to those aspects? Would you say that this is a very rudimentary issue? It's a very basic issue.
No, no. I would be hesitant to use the word rudimentary because it's not rudimentary, but it's not as it doesn't raise as many issues as what they were talking about. But I'm going to tell you what they were
Okay.
talking about eventually, so
Because now
you can
you've
judge for
made me
yourself.
curious. You've now made me curious about what it is.
No, no, no. You may even already know it. Like it's just that you're not associating it with this year. But we'll talk
Okay.
about it at the end. But let's try and see what we can. So, what can we say about this problem now? Does Allah knowing that you were going to do something tomorrow at 3 p.m. means you don't have free will when you go about and end up obviously doing it because Allah's knowledge cannot be proven wrong. So, does that mean you have no free will? So, what do you think?
It'll involve me delving into my theory, which is going to take me a bit of time.
Yeah, but we'd rather
Like,
get through it. I mean,
okay,
and this is the
so
point where we'd want to see,
okay, okay. So for me, this is the meat and potatoes of this session. It's to actually try to describe the theory that I try to grasp with. A few episodes ago, AJ did ask me, "What do I think?" And I described to him that it's sort of like a book. But I don't know, AJ. Do you remember what I tried to describe to
I
you?
remember. I can give a
And I
short
even
summary of what you said.
and I even told you that it's going to be evolving, just to
Yeah,
get it out there. And the thing is, it's so much more richer now, and it's going to get more and more as I try to theorize. So do you remember what it was? I
I
think it was
remember.
like a fork in the
I
road.
remember. You said I must picture myself walking on a road. And right ahead of the road, there's a cul-de-sac, not a cul-de-sac, but another horizontal road. I can either go left, I can either go right. That's my choice, whether I go left or right.
Uh-huh.
But though that road, that left and right, is already laid in front of me by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's how you kind of understood predestination
Okay.
and free will in that as well.
Okay. So
Just
I'm
sorry.
actually
I missed that part. Just say again what you said in the last minute.
The last time I spoke to Imran about this, I just asked him about his view on predestination and free will. So he told me, just imagine myself walking down a road, and at the end of the road, I can either take a left turn or a right turn, right? Whether I take left or right is my choice, but that left turn and right turn is placed in front of me by Allah. And that's how predestination works together with my decision, my will.
Yeah, okay, that's there. That's a good building block to the whole thing. But now the question is going to be: was it written whether you were going to turn right or left?
exactly
Yes,
exactly
that
what I'm
yeah, like basically, yeah.
So
yes exactly what I'm going to be building on. I'm actually going to be using Malana. You said it correctly there. I'm actually going to be using that as a foundation and building on top of that.
yeah,
So
that's what I would expect. Yeah, okay,
yeah.
that's good. That's good.
So okay. So any comments or opinions before I begin?
No, no, it's fine. This is a good place to start moving from the road analogy. It's quite good.
Okay. Okay. So okay. So let's as I've described before, the thing our foundation needs to be, the first thing that we need to correct is our attitude to the subject. That is very important. Um, we almost all the people that I hear discussions regarding free will and destiny, perhaps is because they haven't thought about it a lot. But the thing is, we become victims of reductionism. We simplify everything. This is a very rich topic. These free will and free will and destiny uh, I need you to imagine two bodies, two very rich, dynamic, moving bodies. Think of a solar system. Think about your cell. Think about all of the mechanics that are inside. Think about an engine of a car. People think that free will and destiny is like a brick. It's like a very simple thing, and that is why we falter. That is why we don't understand the way that they work, because we simplify it too much, and it's very instinctive. Something of note is that it's very instinctive for us as human beings to simplify subjects that we do not understand, and that is actually the root of the problem. And something that I build this theory on is that both free will and destiny are very closely connected. They are unimaginably connected, and they are unimaginably well. Uh, I don't want to make this too difficult to understand, but both of them are complex. They are not simple things. In a very physical sense, they intertwine with one another, interlocking. Think about two trees. They intertwine with one another. Free. Okay. I don't want to get ahead of myself, so let's start slowly. Free will in and of itself, how I describe it, how I can understand it, is is something that is not static. It's something that goes up and down. If you can imagine, very close to the phenomenon of iman that we have in the Islamic tradition, faith. It goes up and it goes down. Depending on our circumstances. Free will in and of itself also, the amount of agency that we have on our actions also increases and decreases. How does it increase and decrease? To what degree that it increases or decreases is determined by our destiny. And I take this how, and I don't pull this out of my own pocket. I'd like to bring in the I'd like to bring in the aspect from the Quran that sorry, from the Hadith, that the hearts of the human being, of the individual, is between the two fingers of God, of our Creator. Maulana, am I using that in the right sense here?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
So extrapolating from this is that destiny has a very destiny is not something static, and neither is free will. Both of them have a very distinct and uh, both of them have a very distinct and a very fluctuating effect on our life, on our actions as well. But then another problem arises, is that why uh, if okay, before I move on to that problem, I need to describe this more clearly. For example, as you said, as I described to you in our previous episode, is that imagine yourself on a path and you're walking along, and in front of you there are three forks. And you have the agency at the moment. Let's say it's 9 o'clock in the morning. You have At 9 o'clock in the morning, you can choose any of those three paths. However, if it is destined for you that at that specific moment, your agency, the level of agency that you have is perhaps, let's say 50%, but let's say 60%, and it is destined for you to choose that path, then you will choose it. What tests, and it's and both this these the subject of free will and destiny is very closely linked to theodicy as well, the aspect of suffering, the aspect of virtue, the aspect of justice. All of these come into place when we look at free will. I know it is getting more and more complex as I describe it, but the more you think about it, the easier it will get. You, we as human beings have a very fluctuating amount of agency. Agency meaning the ability to use our actions freely. The amount of the amount of the amount of agency that we have fluctuates from moment to moment. Then okay, it fluctuates from moment to moment, and then destiny comes and plays a part. We make an action according to destiny, and the tests and the consequences. In Urdu, we say that the natija, the consequences of that action, our reaction to that is what our test will be based upon. Now, I know I brought a lot of concepts in here to describe this, to describe these dynamics to you. Before I continue, Maulana, would you give any input? Does any of this make any sense?
I kind of get what you're saying. It's still a bit vague, but I'm just wondering, like, why does our agency go up and down if every single moment of our lives is predestined? Predestined. So it's not only when we take the fork in the road; it's our walking on the road. It's our everything is written. So why is there fluctuation?
I mean it. I mean it specifically to the choices that we have to make, and it could
Yeah. So
depend.
every choice we make would be in that same category, no? Whether it's to move my hand, to talk, to do this, to make a big decision, whatever
Yes,
it is.
this is what I'm saying, that we shouldn't look at it simplistically. There could be choices that were predestined for us, and there could be choices could be categorized. Those were which were ours, and those were destined for us. And
No, so then are you
regardless of,
saying that in certain choices there's no predestination, there's no predestined action that we would do?
well, they would be, even with those predestined actions, we have the option to choose which possible. Well, there would be a predestined action, obviously, but then there would be possibilities also. Now,
But
among
the one
which,
is chosen already.
exactly, the one is chosen
Yeah, so I'm
already.
saying so that's the only type of choice I see. What's the other option that would be give us more or less free will?
Perhaps that there are more, perhaps that there is a possibility of every choice. There is no
Yeah,
one choice.
but when we say possibility, no, so there has to be one that is known by Allah that's going to happen or is predestined. That's the whole thing about
Yeah,
predestination. You get what I'm saying?
yeah,
So
like
that's why I sort of like on this point, I get what you were trying to say, but I can't think of a scenario where we would have more or less free will in one choice than another choice.
yeah, like I mean, on the day of Qiyamah, we're gonna get our book either in our right hand or the left hand, right? And if you think of any book, for example, when you start the book, the main characters don't know what's gonna happen to them in that book, but the book is already written. That's the argument. That no matter, how long it takes you to read that book or wherever you skip, whatever's written on that page will always be written on that page. That's the question of, tomorrow morning could have done something differently. Tomorrow afternoon could have done something differently at 3 p.m.
So I did also like what you said about the fact that free will and qadar are very intertwined. Sometimes we think of it as two opposing things, but they're quite and that's the point that also I do want to touch on eventually. But I'm saying that's basically my issue so far, is that I don't see how one choice can have more or less free will than another choice. Again, it's because maybe I haven't understood exactly what you're saying, so that's an issue. But I would think let's define taqdeer like this, right? So maybe we can just so it's a little bit clearer in our head. So you can simply think of taqdeer, if nothing else, as just being Allah's knowledge. So Allah knows what you're going to do at every time. And then obviously the ulama explains sometimes that he wrote everything down, obviously like on the way we write, but on the Lawh al-Mahfuz. But that is just a putting down of what Allah already knew. So it doesn't really add more to that. So
Yeah,
when
that's
we talk about
knowledge,
taqdeer,
predestination. Yeah,
it's just the knowledge. This is Allah's knowledge, right? Yeah, okay, it was written on the Lawh al-Mahfuz, or it was or the angels knew it, or whatever. Okay, it's there in its place, but The thing is Allah knew beforehand. That's all we're really talking about when we're talking about taqdeer on that side. And
Okay,
then on the
so
other hand, we have our actions.
gee,
And our actions are, free will. So free will, well, that's what we're going to be fighting over. But I'm saying, in that sense, Allah knows all, So are we defining taqdeer as something different to that?
that is what I was going to touch upon. I think this is where where I'm having a disconnect is because, and I've learned something new today that you describe destiny as the knowledge of the creator. I describe destiny as a very physical chain of events. So it's not as abstract as an aspect of God. I describe it as a very physical chain of events, an undisturbed, unchangeable change of events.
No, so what
That
is
is
the
how.
events that happen, like, the occurrences that happen in the world? That's what happens. And that's the destiny playing out of the preordainment. So taqdeer literally means to preordain something. So preordain means before the events happen, before the destiny unfolds. That's the events, that's the destiny show. We get that. It was preordained by Allah, writing it in the quote, saying they're telling the angels to write in the Rawh al-Mahfuz. But my point of linking it to the knowledge is that preordainment doesn't really add anything to the fact that Allah already knew it. So the objection is built around that. And yes, the destiny itself unfolding, if that's the events, sure, that's okay. The events unfolding. But we're looking at the tension between Allah decreeing something, preordaining something, and then when the moment comes, we have a choice in that moment.
Gee, but the rebuttal to that would be, if even your reaction to that is already preordained, then why are you being held accountable for it?
Yeah, that's the question we're trying to answer now. That's what we're trying to look at.
The only way that I can see the only, well, that is of me right now on the, what is the date, on 13th of January, Tuesday, 2026. This is what I can think of at the moment, that perhaps the level of agency that we have fluctuates, and that is the, or even if I'm not describing it properly, there is an unknown third variable out there that we cannot articulate at this point in time. There has to be,
Sure. Yeah.
because
Yeah, sure.
because
Yeah, that
because of
I'm
that.
fine with that. I'm
Yes,
very fine with saying that. That I get
yes.
completely.
There's a
Because so
you
that's
you
why I
you
like your reductionist. I understand. We shouldn't be too reductionist because there could be those
exactly.
third or even fourth variable. I'm fine with that. But the idea that we have more or less agency because of more or less preordainment kind of thing, that's not really sitting so well with me. That specific part. The rest of it made a lot of sense, and I kind of got that.
No,
So
even
now, so basically, we left with this now. Is
Jay,
that this is what I want to discuss, and this is not really discussed in the books of ilmul kalaam because they felt it's not an objection. So the ulama of Aqidah basically said the fact that I know that something's going to happen tomorrow or that person A is going to do something tomorrow doesn't influence his choice in any way. So they didn't really see, like, what are we talking? Now we get what we've, to us, this is a very natural objection. If Allah knew that you were going to do the sin, then you couldn't do. This is how we think of it. This is how I believe we think about. We think about it like this: tomorrow at 3 p.m., Allah knew I'm going to do a certain sin. Tomorrow 3 p.m. comes, I can't not do the sin. Therefore, no free will. Is that accurate? That's like the way that people are thinking about it.
uh, that is a
Basically, yeah. So from now to tomorrow 3 p.m. could have done something differently.
No, no, leave from now till from now till tomorrow 3 p.m. Everything was written. Allah knew exactly what you were going to do in all of those
Oh
moments, and you
yeah,
had to do all
yeah,
of
yeah,
those things.
yeah. At
So,
3 p.m.
so
Could I make a different
yeah,
choice, or that
yeah.
choice will,
So at 3 p.m., could you have made a different choice? And I mean, if we say yes, then this is what we're trying to say. If those who are making the objection, which is us, because we get this objection, is that if you could have made a different choice, then you're saying Allah's knowledge could have been wrong, and if you can't make a different choice, then you don't have free will. That's the corner that we're pushing. We're getting into now, right?
Jay.
yeah, basically.
The thing is, the problem that you've posed, from what I know, from what I've come across, is that the way Islamic tradition addresses that is that you as the individual do not have knowledge of what God has preordained. So you have no excuse to actually go ahead and do the evil because your purpose was to obey God. Have I got
100%,
that correct?
100%. So that, yes, that's a perfect starting point. Actually, the first point to make is that you don't know what God. And there's a very interesting hadith, and obviously in COVID time it came up big time, where Umar radiallahu anhu was going to enter the place where the plague of was, and then Abu Ubaidah told him. Like, so Umar then said, "No, I'm not going to enter now." And then Abu Ubaidah told him, "Are you running from the qadr of Allah? Are you running away from the taqdeer of Allah? Like, you know, you don't want to enter the city. If Allah wrote that this will happen, it will happen. Like, what's so?" Umar radiallahu anhu said, "No. نفر من قدر الله إلى قدر الله." We're fleeing from the one taqdeer and we're going to the other taqdeer, meaning at this point in
Exactly.
time, we don't know which is the taqdeer. We don't know at this point in time. Whatever we do will be the taqdeer, meaning it will be the taqdeer, meaning it will be what we will now know what was written for us because we did it. That's why I liked what you said about this, so intertwined. You get what I'm saying? So that's the first level to this whole thing. Is it doesn't take out. We're still getting to a bit of a better answer, but this is the foundation. This is the core of the whole thing. It doesn't take away your personal responsibility because you had no idea what was written for you, right? You actively chose to do that sin at that point in time. Yes or no? You chose. You weren't forced.
Yeah.
So can someone say no? Like, my hand just went out and punched this guy. I didn't want to do it, but it just happened. No, you can't say that. You did it, you willed it, you intended it, and it happened as you intended, and you didn't know that that was what necessarily Allah had preordained you to do before that. So you have no choice. You have no excuse, as you rightfully said. Zero excuse for you, right? But
Accountability for actions. But
yeah,
like you
you're,
switch it to a
yeah,
good
sorry.
deed then at 3 p.m. Can I not do the good deed at 3 p.m.?
Yeah, so good deed, same story. Good deed comes over there. You intended to do it. You chose to do it. You can't say, "Oh, someone can't come and say, oh, you shouldn't get rewarded for this because Allah knew you were going to do it. Therefore, you didn't have a choice." No, you intended to do the good deed. You wanted to do the good deed. You didn't know beforehand that this is what Allah wrote for you. So you didn't feel like you were forced. You did it with all your, so you should get rewarded for it. And the other person should get punished for it, right? So personal accountability, agree 100%. That was the perfect answer. It doesn't take away personal accountability. But now I want to get to the crux of the thing, which of this specific part, which is that we wrongly define, and this is again I'm not quoting any ulama of Aqidah on this because, as I said, they didn't see a contradiction between this, right? So they didn't really talk about this topic in detail. But we defining free will, for some reason, we defining free will as the logical possibility of being able to do something else, right? So we sort of saying like, you have free will if you could have done something else, which is natural in the sense that if I could only do, if there's a gun to my head, and it's not the best example, there's a gun to my head, or for whatever reason, they were forcing me through this one door. There were 10 doors, and they forced me through this one door. I couldn't do anything else, therefore I was forced. So now we take that analogy and we apply it to the knowledge of Allah and say, you know what, technically we couldn't have done anything else because Allah knew we were going to do this, therefore we are forced. But, wait, is everyone following what I'm saying so far? Like, I'm trying to just go through their thought process. But the reality is the similarity factor is between those two situations is not whether you could have technically done another choice or not. It's whether you intended that action and you did it willfully. So free will should be an action that is done with your will being free, meaning you intend to do it and it occurs as you intended and you are not coerced in any way, therefore your will is free. Let me give you an example. So it's similar to you in this room and there's 5 doors in front of you, right? And you look at these 5 doors and you're on the inside of the room and you're like, okay, I'm going through the middle one. And you open the door and you go through the middle one, right? Now, unbeknownst to you, the other 4 doors were locked. So you couldn't have exited through those other 4 doors. It was not possible. Actually, let's say they weren't even done, they were locked. They're not even doors, they were just painted there. It's just a wall. So you couldn't have gone through those 4 doors. But does it mean that you didn't have free will when you went through the middle door because you couldn't go through the other doors? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So meaning the mere fact that another option was not possible does not mean that you were forced to do that, so long as you don't have knowledge that the other options were not possible. And you in every moment do not know which is Allah's taqdeer for you. Therefore, whatever you do, you fully intend that and it happens. So your free will is only encumbered if you try to do something and something else happens. Then you can say, I don't have free will. I was intending to do this one thing, but Allah made me do something else. But Allah has made it such that He has the system or the destiny unfolds as we intend. So everything we intend to do, we end up doing it. I don't mean like, we intend to become a millionaire and then it happens. I mean like we intend to move our hand moves. We intend to send this message, the message gets sent. Our hand moves and types the message out and everything. Nothing happens where we like, no, I don't want to be bad to this person, but now my mouth is just speaking and being bad to this person. That would encumber our free will. But the mere fact that technically that is the only option, if our will was freely chose that option, then there's free will. I don't know if you get.
I get
So,
you. I get you.
so, so,
But like,
so, Maaf, Malana, what would you say? What would you say to somebody who would say that? Are you alluding to free will being an illusion rather than something concrete?
So yeah, it depends. And I get that. I get that. Like some people, and this is another point that we need to discuss. Just to go on a little bit of tangent before I come back to that, is that the prominent atheist view today is, I don't want to say taqdeer, it's not taqdeer, it's determinism, but they also believe that I'm not going to say also, they
Yes,
believe that we don't have free
Daniel
will.
Dennett. I know
Meaning,
Daniel Dennett.
they believe that every single thing that happens is based, so the way naturalists work, which quantum mechanics, again, we're going back to that, has totally demolished, is that situation A necessarily leads to situation B. So me in this situation, everything I know, my DNA, nature versus nurture, everything I've learned in the past will lead me to make a certain choice, and that choice only because it's guided by my DNA and my past experience, which can explain every single thing that I do. Therefore, every choice I make free will is just an illusion that you choose. When you get up in the morning to choose your cereal and you think you chose based on free will, no, you didn't. You chose because you knew you're having a strenuous day, so you wanted this cereal because it gives you a little bit more of this, and you knew that that'll help you with that. So all of these things factored into your decision, and they caused your decision. And so it felt like it was free will, but it wasn't really free will. So the illusion, because you mentioned the illusion of free will. So those who follow hard determinism like that, which is, I mean, I don't know now, but in the days of Sam Harris and stuff, that was the mainstream view of hard determinism like this, where there's no free will is just an illusion, and so they would say that free will is just an illusion, but that's because again they're defining free will as being able to make another choice in that moment. But we're not defining it like that. We're saying free will is that whatever you chose, you freely chose it. And nothing forced you, and nothing made it seem like, oh, I wanted to do this, but then I chose that. So for us, when we define free will like that, we're not saying free will is an illusion. But if we were to define free will like the hard determinists, then we would probably end up saying that, yeah.
yeah, it's simply like, even if Allah knows beforehand what we're gonna do, like, before we were born, before the whole world was,
Yes.
created, Allah says not even a leaf from a tree falls without His will and knowledge.
Yes.
So the fact that that knowledge is there, basically, what the argument is that nothing can happen otherwise.
Yes. And we saying that, sure, nothing can happen otherwise, but that doesn't encumber your free will, because whatever you did, you freely will to do that.
Precisely. That is why.
Understood.
That is why in the theory that I was trying to describe is that but that yes, there is free will. There is definitely free will. There is definitely free will. There is definitely something described as destiny. They are both intertwined, and there is a third variable. Even though I cannot articulate it now, but let's call it the variable. It is something that's definitely out there because there will be something as accountability, and they wouldn't have been the factor of accountability if free will was an illusion. Do you know what I'm trying to say, Malana?
Yes, agreed. No, and I agree with that totally. That's why I liked exactly what you said about they're very intertwined. And also free will, there is accountability. So free will is not an illusion. You are freely choosing whatever action you're doing. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knowing that does not go against that. So there's the scholars of Aqidah, they were just like, yeah, okay, this is obvious, so we're not going to discuss it, right? Which now obviously turns out like maybe they should have. So we had we had something to fall back on.
Yeah.
But
So
but that, so that was, and then one more thing I just want to will make just to understand, just add an extra dimension to it, quite literally,
yeah.
is that when we make a taqdeer go back to the knowledge of Allah, which is basically is, and then we sort of say, well, before it happened, Allah knew this, and we sort of put Allah in time when we do that, whereas Allah is above space and time. And so it doesn't exist before. His knowledge was not like before or after or thing or here. It's beyond our understanding. So this doesn't really affect the discussion too much, but
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
from the
something to think.
perspective, because the person is
Yeah,
talking to.
from a person's perspective, but it's just something to bear in mind. It doesn't really affect the actual meat of the discussion. So for me, I think I don't know. I felt the session like I think we covered like it quite well, and we got
Uh,
through the
there's
like.
one more thing I'd attach
No,
to
no,
this.
there's still actually a lot to the discussion, right? But
A lot
for
to
this,
attach, yeah.
yeah, for this part, meaning I think even if we stop here, it's we covered. We didn't. There's still more we're going to discuss a little bit now, but we can go on to the because Imran put something on the chat about the Ashari, Maturidi, Athari, etc. And I do want to discuss that, but maybe in the next session we can discuss that part. Right? Because all of those things, cusp and creating actions, that's the different discussion that I was talking about. That's
Yeah,
another
yeah,
discussion. That's not the discussion of taqdeer in and of itself. So
yeah.
we
Acquiring
can, if
action.
there's any loose ends here, we can tie them up, and I think we can end this as part one. And then in part two, I can just or we can just go through like the Ashari Maturidi slight differences, etc. But it's necessary to have this foundation to move on to that. Like this
I
should be like cleared up, and then we can move on to that.
one more
You know what I
thing
mean?
that's related to this, Molana, that I just like to raise. So, we live in a time with influences, and we can see, like, even pre-influencer stage, we know every prophet was a shepherd, you know, and that they would have followers, they would have people who would follow them. And what I'm trying to say is the circumstances of which you are in, like the people you are surrounded with. Does that not affect your choices or limit your, the Imran spoke about the three forks, circumstances based on, your genetics, your upbringing, your people that you're surrounded with, say your family, your mother, your father, your brother, your sisters, all, you know I'm not really judging, but like just theoretically terrible choices. You grew, for example, you grew up in a house where, like, being foul-mouthed, for example, is completely normal. You don't know otherwise, and then you kind of come out of that. And I guess what I'm trying to ask is, in that situation, is very, very person specific, but the same rules apply to everyone. And
And that's I get
based on
exactly what
that,
you're saying.
the
I get
say,
exactly
yeah,
what you're
based on
saying.
what actions they do, what's easier for them to do, what's harder for them to do, versus
So
someone
so
who's born in a house with Quran and Islam, and the actually easier to do this and harder to do this.
correct. So this is a very good question. And there's I don't know if there's this Durban comedian. His name is Carwin or something. He's a colored guy. So he got some nice comedy shows. So we met up with him at Al Ansar Souk. There's quite a few non-Muslims come there. So we had a table there with the IPCI. And then we did some dawah with him, and he was super interested. So he came to the center, and then one of the things he mentioned was that, well, he phrased it like he was asking a different question, but it came down to basically this. Now, the thing is, in Islam, there's the Sharia, the law, what you should be doing, right? And that's there, and that's, we could say, universal, and that applies to almost, yes, there are exceptions. If you're starving, you can eat pork, etc., etc. There's exceptions, but the law applies generally, regardless of your situation. Okay, but Allah's judgment on you is purely person specific. It's purely person specific. So the amount of reward that person will get for not being foul mouthed, because of the amount of effort he had to put in, will be much more than the person who grew up in a household where they never did that thing. And similarly, his punishment will be, if he does do it, or if there is a punishment attached to it, will be much less severe. So in Islam, we don't look down at anyone because we don't know their circumstances. His 2 rakats of Fajr, of Zohar, or 4 rakats of Zohar he's reading without any sunnats could be much more rewardable than my 12 rakats of Zohar I'm reading, because for me that's the norm. Less effort, less sincerity. He's doing it like with pure desire. So there's an interesting saying, but it captures the essence that's in the Quran Hadith, right? Which goes, Hasanatul Abrar, Sayyiatul Muqarrabin. So what it means is literally that the good deeds of your average pious person is actually the sins of the very pious people, of the people that are very close to Allah. Meaning those people who have reached that level for whatever reason, they are the muqarrabin, those who are very close to Allah. If they slip up in one small aspect, they will get taken to task for that. Whereas another pious person, just your average pious person, if you could say that, he may do that and it'll be completely overlooked because of his situation. And this is something we see in Quran also, where Anbiya, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, for example, will do something completely permissible. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say, no, you shouldn't have done that, you should have done this. Because he's held to a much higher standard because of who he is. So that is also why in Islam we don't ever say this person is going to be in the highest stage of Jannah or in the lowest stages of hell, unless it's mentioned in Quran, like Abu Lahab or something like that. A Sahabi passed away, and his family member said, he was so pious, he's probably going to be in the high stages of Jannah. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam got upset and he said, how can you say that? You don't know you don't know how Allah is going to judge him. And that applies also on the converse, that a person could die, we don't know what was his situation. That's why we never pass a ruling on any one person. We may say kuffar go to Jahannam as a broad principle, but we will not say, for example, this specific person is definitely in Jahannam. Right? Because again, the judgment is person specific, and that's made very clear in the hadith and in the way that the Quran describes actions. So that sort of thing, in a shari'i dunyawi sense, everyone's equal before the law. You know what I mean? Like if you came from a family where they stole and I came from a family where they didn't, but you stole, your hands are going to be cut off. That's the punishment. They're going to apply the punishment. So in a worldly sense, everyone's equal before the law, but in a meaning not equal, everyone's faces the exact same law. In a ukhrawi hereafter sense, it's basically your situation that only Allah truly will know, even better than you would know. So I don't know if that covers it.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. I was more so saying though, but like, your circumstances kind of influence the choices as as you grow. If you're in a family where it's like mostly bad things, stealing, gambling, it's like normal. Everyone gambles.
Like for them, we wouldn't say, okay, now gambling is less of a problem because of you, but fi haqqillah, what Allah is going to do with them, we understand from the Quran and Hadith that that issue, Allah will take circumstances into account. But we in the world, we don't have the ability to give that leeway based on, we don't know. So, and you're right, and that is what the atheists say, that your environment influences you. Your nature and nurture makes every decision you're going to do. And we're not necessarily saying they make it, but we're saying that yes, they will influence it. They will influence it. But at the end of the day, that influence that's there because of your environment will be taken into account when you're rewarded or punished. And so everything is just at the end of the day.
That makes 100% sense. I'm very happy with the answer.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, so
Ah,
I think we can end it here for now. I don't know if there's a few more things to discuss. I'm not like in a big hurry. I'm just saying I don't want to go on to the next discussion, which is what you posted in the chat, because that's going to open up a whole another can of worms.
yeah, no,
Well, we're
100%.
going to go on to that. We're going to do that, but just maybe not now.
Yeah, 100%. Imran, any other thoughts from your side before we end the episode?
Just to wrap up this dynamic, Marf, I don't wanna it I don't want to force this on you, but this is a theory that I'm comfortable with. This is why I'm trying to work on it as much as I can, because I'm gonna try. The thing is, it's because of a lack of words and because of my own ignorance as well of the subject and of the traditions as a whole. But from what I can understand, Malana, where I instinctively where my mind takes me is that, okay, yes, we have a free will. we have a destiny. Those two things are concrete. There is something unknown out there that we cannot articulate, and that has been uh, that has been hidden from us, which I describe as the third variable. Um, and it is something that causes the harmony. I would say harmony is the wrong word. It causes the emulsification. I don't know how to describe it. It causes the two of them to work in such a way that accountability becomes a reality. It has to. Otherwise there would not be any accountability. And that variable is very closely linked to our soul. It's something very closely connected to our ruh, because our ruh is also something else that is not described at all in all of our tradition. There's almost nothing. There's almost uh, there's almost no points. There's almost no description of it in our Islamic tradition. So do you think that makes more for sense? Do you think that makes
Yeah, yeah.
more of a sense
No, no,
than
I'm
when
with you. Whatever
than I
you said
was
now, I'm with you. Whatever you said now, and I truly understand how hard it is to articulate a position that you're still working on. So I completely get that also. So, but what you said now, yeah, the third variable is an important thing to remember, so that we don't end up being too reductionist in the whole thing.
Because the thing is, because the entire crux of it, from what I can see from my perspective, is that there should not be any accountability. If I were to say it in a statement, do you agree with me, both of you? That there should not be any accountability if there is an absence or an illusion of free will.
Yeah, sure, sure,
Yeah.
of course.
So in order to answer that, in order to answer that, that is where we bring in the unknown third variable, which is that factor of our soul that causes the uh, which facilitates. I think that's the best word that I can think of right now. Which facilitates the the need for the accountability. What do you think, AJ? Makes some sort of sense?
I know it 100% makes sense. See, like Allah knows, like Molana said, out of time. So everything has already happened already. Every single thing has already. The knowledge is there, but not only that, Allah knows our soul also more than anyone knows us. Our parents, Allah knows exactly what we're going to do, when we're going to do it. Even like even without the concept of Allah is out of time,
Exactly.
like what we
Has
do,
to.
it's yeah, how we act, how we behave. For example, if someone says something to you and you react very disproportionately to that action, and you start screaming and losing your head, that your how you'd react in that moment, Allah firstly he already knew in that would happen, and secondly your soul and how you'd react, Allah already has that knowledge as well.
Gee, his knowledge, his complete knowledge, obviously, is a non-negotiable in Islamic theology. It is an absolute non-negotiable because it's part of his perfection, as opposed to our imperfection. That is why we say we do not know what's in our destiny. So what we do know is that our purpose is obedience, and if we go against that and if we rebel, then that is when we are taken into account. The only thing that we need to tackle with as students of religious tradition, uh, and of atheism as well, the exact crux of of this dilemma is, uh, why is there a facilitation of accountability? Why are we being taken into account? And that is something that we will have to articulate, something that we have to think about. And eventually, I'm sure, if it's really meant for us, if it's in our destiny to know, we will.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
think
I
we
think
can end it on there.
That's a good way
and
to
I
That's a
end
think
the
on
good.
that
That's a
episode.
good place.
bombshell, I think it's the end of a very fruitful discussion.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah. Okay. It's been good.
Yeah, but we'll give
Let's
it
see.
there. I hope
Yeah.
our listeners can benefit from this our explanation. And Marv, we said 30 to 40 minutes, and 1 hour 20 minutes in, and yeah, we're still gonna do a part two.
Oh
I don't know
yes.
why I thought we'd do this in 30 to 40 minutes, but that just shows we don't know what's gonna happen next. So yeah, it was meant
So,
for this to be into two parts and more than an hour.
yeah,
Yeah.
inshallah, definitely.
All right.
All right,
I'll see you all right.
shukran, my
Assalamu
brothers. And yeah, let's leave
Jazakallah.
it there.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
alaikum.